So there's a guy who loved to fish. He was retired, his wife had passed, and he just loved to get on his boat and fish. One day, he's fishing, not a care in the world, and he hears a voice. Rivet, pick me up. There was nobody around. Pick me up. Now, there was nobody around. There were no boats. He wasn't near shore. But he was in some lily pads, and he's looking around, and there's a frog. Pick me up. You talk? Yeah. And you're a frog. I said, yeah, pick me up. He picks him up and says, now, kiss me, and I'll turn into the most beautiful woman that you've ever seen. And I'll be at your service for the rest of your life. I'm magical. I can give you anything you want. He puts the frog in his pocket, keeps on fishing. He says, hey, didn't you hear me? Oh, I heard you. Then why don't you kiss me? You know, at my age, I'd rather have a talking frog. I love that joke. It cracks me up. And it reminds me of my life. And I think a lot of things that when we're younger, that we think that we need to be happy. You know, think bodily pleasures, food, a lot of stuff, expensive boats, cars, money, is that as we get older, we see a lot of things that promise us happiness don't deliver. That's why the devil is called the father of lies. That's why Jesus had to go 40 days in the desert after his baptism. God filled him with even more of his divine power at his baptism. He's ready to start his ministry of healing and teaching. And he had to go out in the desert to sort out all the voices, to be able to get his head straight about what really works and really connects him to God and the source of all things, and what doesn't. I think Lent is designed to do a similar thing, to be able to help us to be able to take 40 days to say no to things that we do a lot for pleasure and for energy, and say no to some of those things of this world, and try to pray more, to get more connected to God through not only prayer, but giving to other people, and saying no to every whim our body wants us to do. Now, Father Rob Galea, I think it's Galea, is this wonderful young priest in Australia. And he has a very famous ministry to young people called Icon Ministries. Could look him up because he's a great preacher. He was recently on Preach, the Catholic Homilies podcast run by America Media and the Jesuits. And his homily about last week's readings, which was the gospel was, God so loved the world that he sent his only son to testify to the light. And he talked about light, and that reminds me of that joke, because in the light, we see things that are the way they are, and not the false and the shadows. God's light brings clarity of what really makes us happy and what doesn't. Galea, Father Rob, tells the story about growing up in Balta. And he says they had a big garden, and his sister and he periodically would go to the big rock in the garden, and they would push it over. So then the black part and the wet part was face up. And then they would see all the wall of bugs, right, that was always clung to a rock in dirt. And he noticed and remembered that when they would turn the rock over, all of those bugs would scatter in the light. And he said that was such a good image for Lent, because as we try to say no to things and try to go deeper, what are some of the bugs that are coming up? What are our habits? What are the things that we're avoiding? Are there painful things or things that we need to deal with? or things that we haven't worked through, or bad habits, things that keep us from God? Are there things that help us to run from God and other people that are exposed like bugs under a rock? Now, some things in God's light in our prayer just go away, but there are some things that may just be staying with us. And Father Rob was saying that for some things we just need, first of all, to ask God's light into our situations. Lord Jesus, flood me with your light, right? Help me, bring me your light. And then there might be some things, once we start praying that, he says, let God make you uncomfortable. Because when there's things, those bugs, they're going to make us uncomfortable. And that's how they're released through us. So don't avoid the uncomfortable feeling. And you may need to talk to someone or get therapy or be able to deal with some things in order for them to be healed. He said the second thing that we can do to be able to help with some of these things, these bugs that are revealed, is go to the beautiful sacrament of reconciliation. And I agree with him. I mean, reconciliation, confession is all about healing. But so many people, the way we were raised, to have such a negative view of reconciliation, and it allows darkness and the devil to keep a hold on us when we hold those things. And anytime you say, oh, I don't go to confession, I just pray to God, myself, and I'm sure he forgives me, or I don't have anything, to confess, you're just lying to yourself, and you're giving in to the fear of all of those voices and the darkness that has you, that says, if people knew what you were really like and what you've really done, then they wouldn't love you and they would think differently of you. Or numerous other voices and statements. So he says three things that I thought are interesting. He says, number one, the priest is not there to judge you. He's there to give you God's mercy and forgiveness. And you're not confessing to us as individuals. We are playing the role of Jesus. Now, I can't imagine if you just say you're sorry to God in your room, that God doesn't forgive you. But I know the power of darkness that wants to keep everything unspoken. And as a confessor, I know how powerful it is, energetically and psychologically, when you say your sin out loud. You say it out loud to Jesus in the person of the priest, it's released. And then we can give you, through the church, the guarantee of God's forgiveness, of absolution. And I have experienced that people experience forgiveness from God in a much deeper way when they go to reconciliation, when they go through the liturgy and the ritual of reconciliation, to be able to face their fears and their guilt, to speak it out loud so God can heal it. So number one, we're not there to judge you. We're there to offer you Jesus's forgiveness and his mercy. It says number two, you're not going to scandalize the priest. I thought that was hilarious, and it's true. He says after 2 or 3 months as a priest, you've heard everything. And we've done almost everything. We're human, and we know that every confession is about forgiveness and about how sorry people are. And it's a very powerful time. It's not time to judge. It's time, oh my gosh, I can't believe they have that much courage and trust in God to let God heal that. The other thing is, we are trained, but I know myself as a priest, we're trained to say, you don't let that stick, whatever they tell you to the person, and you don't remember it outside of confessional. I can just attest that that's true in my experience. I don't remember things, and it transfers to other conversations. I'll go see someone in the hospital, and someone will say, what's wrong with them? And I almost always, I can't, certainly right away, but I can't remember easily because I forget. And that's part of the grace of the sacrament. And his third thing, so number one is the priest is not there to judge you. Number two is you will not scandalize the priest. We've heard it all. And number three, we really won't tell anybody. We can't. I mean, the seal of confession has held up in court. It is between you and God. There's nothing priests take more sacred than the vow and the seal of confession. It's between you and God. It's not between us. Now, if there is a horrible crime that someone confesses, a priest would probably try to talk them in to talking to someone outside of confession. But we can't, no matter what it is, say anything. That's how serious we take it. Now, given all that, you're not going to scandalize us. We're not there to judge you. And we don't tell anybody. It is between you and God. There's still that fear. Then go to another priest. Go to a penance service to a priest you don't know, or go to another parish and go behind the screen, or use the screen in your own church. And if you think we know your voice, just go someplace else. That's what it takes to be able to finally release the stuff that you're holding on to. Let God heal you. And ask God to give you the strength to be able to endure the little bit of uncomfort and thinking about saying it out loud and working through it in order for God to heal you. So many people just walk around with guilt and shame that is not logical and not true because of the lies of the evil one. And God calls us to get ready for Easter, from going to confession to examining our consciences and see what's in the way and what we want to say we're sorry to God for. Not because God's on a power trip or that we priests enjoy it in that way, but because we know that everyone needs to be healed. And when we're humble and we confess, God can release us from the grips of darkness and give us forgiveness and his light, because that's why God came, to give us his love. So we will be offering the sacrament of reconciliation at St. Pat's of Heatherdowns on our Day of Grace this Wednesday, March 20th. That means from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Father Dave and I would be available for confession at the top of the hour. So we'll go at 10, hear the confessions there, and come back at 11, 12, 1, etc. So we'd come at the top of the hour between 10 and 6 this week and really experience God's great forgiveness and his mercy and his light. God bless you, and happy Lent.